Welcome to the Navseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, Ad Nauseam listeners, to episode 99. Jeff, did you ever think we would get here?
No way. I mean, I was shocked when we hit 15, to tell you the truth.
Honestly?
Yeah.
You were ready to hang up your podcasting cleats at episode 14?
I didn't think it would make, no, actually, the truth is, yeah, of course we made it to 99. Yeah, exactly.
You weren't ready to shuffle off into the locker room?
I was thinking about it this morning, though. I thought, wow, almost 100 episodes. That's right. I felt really good about that.
You did?
Yeah.
Did it make you excited?
It did make me a little excited.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to the next 100.
I am too.
Yeah.
The next 100. Wow.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
From humble beginnings to what? I don't know.
And
soup to nuts? Something like that?
Something like that.
Okay.
But you think about the hours that people could waste just having our voices on in their headphones.
Someone said to me recently, I won't name that person. They know who they are.
Yeah.
And it hurt. Something along the lines of, I'm glad I won't have to listen to your voice at 1.5 speed anymore. Ouch.
Ouch, man.
Yeah.
Man, I hope you're not friends with this person anymore.
Not anymore.
Okay, yeah,
No.
that's it. Yeah. So, Dave, what do we got on? What's on tap today?
We're back to the Aeneid.
Fantastic.
In the words of Bruce Springsteen, we're about to go down, 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 something like
It's
that.
one of my favorite lyrics of his.
What is the name of that song?
I think it's We're Going Down.
We're going down.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are at the entrance to the Underworld, and we are about to descend.
Yes, we are.
Right? We're about to take the escalator from the food court to the shoe store.
Down to the DMV, isn't that what's down there?
No, it's worse than that. That's the Homeric view of the Underworld, remember?
That's right.
A Pain in the Nequia, parts 1 and 2
Exactly.
from the Odyssey, book 11.
Yeah, the Roman Underworld is quite different.
Yes, I like the way you have described it already here in the script. You described it as a department store, right?
Yeah, or a mall.
A mall?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where you can find everything you don't want.
Exactly right. But it's very well built and very well organized, as you would expect from a Roman shopping area.
That's correct.
Yes.
Because you can hardly get those words out. I'm with you, buddy. Boy, it's been one of those weeks, hasn't it?
Me too, man.
You can smell the approach of Smarch.
Oh, man.
Here in September.
Yeah, it's sunny out there today, but we're getting a bit of that touch of that lousy Smarch weather.
Yeah, it's lurking, right? Kind of like a locus amoenus.
Right.
The weather is daring you to think it's pleasant because, boom, it'll turn on you in a moment.
Fall. I love fall, but it always kind of makes me a little bit nervous because you never know what you're going to wake up to.
Yeah, you'll come around the corner and there's winter, right? Slap you in the face.
That's right.
Speaking about slapping people in the face.
Yeah?
We have a shout out, don't we?
Yeah, we're going to slap this guy in the face?
No. This guy is a mensch, let me tell you.
Tell us about him.
So this is my good friend Buster, and that's not his real name. His real name is Harry R. McLeod Jr., and I met this fellow back in, it must have been 2000, 2001, when I lived in Virginia, the great state or commonwealth, I can't remember, of Virginia. Buster is a tall, fun-loving, intelligent, goofy kind of guy that, instant friendship was formed right
Fantastic,
there.
yeah.
We used to play tennis. You see, you want to play tennis, Dave? Yeah, let's play tennis. We go out. He'd start serving, and he would start chanting at me, no bagel, no bagel, no bagel, no bagel. What? He said, a bagel, like a zero. It's like 15 love, 15-0.
Yeah.
A zero is a bagel, right? Start chanting at me, no bagel.
No bagel.
Yeah.
Man.
So we played some tennis.
Yeah. You're a tennis player? Do you still play tennis?
Not very much or very well.
Have you played it since Buster?
A couple times.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to be somewhat fleet of foot. What is the epithet for Achilles? Podas ocus, fleet with respect to his feet.
Yes.
Right? So I could do that, but not so much anymore.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah.
We got to take up the table tennis, which I understand you fancy yourself quite good at.
I think my best days are, again, behind me.
That's good to know.
I used to be fleet of the flick of the wrist.
Interesting.
Back in the day, I still love it.
Ping pong is all in the hips,
Really?
Oh, yeah. That's where you develop the power.
Really?
Got to pivot at the hips.
Is that right?
I can see this is going to be an easy win for me.
No, you're just making me uncomfortable.
You're going to roll right over.
Hey, let's talk more about Buster.
All right. Harry R. McLeod Jr., Buster. He says, Jeff, what does he say?
He says, I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to what has become one of my favorite podcasts.
Well, let's stop him right there.
Exactly. What more needs to be said?
One of his favorite podcasts?
Oh, I missed that.
See, I can find the insult anywhere, whereas you just see a compliment.
I do. But now, we could We could edit this. Become his favorite podcast.
Let's
of all
take
time.
that out.
Right.
Okay. Buster says, I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to what has become my favorite podcast.
Yes. He says, I attempt to utilize the time I walk my 4 dogs. My gosh.
Yeah.
It's like being pulled in a chariot.
He's got one attached to each limb, I understand. The quadriga that they used to ride, the four-horser.
Yes. Right. That's what I'm picturing. By listening to various podcasts, David reminded me recently of Ad Nauseam, and after the first episode, I was hooked. The episodes are engaging, educational, and entertaining. I've learned a great deal and enjoyed doing so. Residents of Raleigh, so he's a North Carolinian
He's
now?
a North Carolinian,
Okay.
yep.
May have seen a 6'4" man walking his dogs while pondering, laughing, or asking Siri what a word means that Dr. Noe just said in an episode I'm listening to at the moment.
Yeah, I think he's being a little modest there because I think he's taller than that.
Really?
He's approaching more like 6'6".
Wow.
It's a big guy.
Tall drink of water.
Being pulled by 4 dogs while he's listening to classics.
Yeah, I like that. Almost, it reminds me of it's almost a G.K. Chesterton type image.
Oh, really?
Yes, kind of like a bizarre, kind of absurd image of walking down the street chasing his hat or something like
Right.
that. Yeah, I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think of more of who's the guy in the Underworld? We're going to come across him today. He's his skin is stretched over 9 acres as a particular kind of punishment.
Oh yeah. Oh, but I'm forgetting his name now.
Maybe it's Tifoius. I can't remember.
So that's how you're picturing Buster here.
Well, maybe being pulled in 4 directions by dogs. Well, he's trying to listen to the podcast, but he goes on.
Yes, please take it away, David.
Oh, he says, I can only remind them, meaning the listener, of what Caesar taught us. Milan, that is. A tired dog is a happy dog.
Do you know Caesar Milan?
I had to look him up.
The dog whisperer.
He's the dog whisperer.
Yes.
So you know this guy.
I do.
What do you think?
Well, my mother-in-law was kind of enamored of him for a while,
Okay.
and so she would tell me about Caesar. I've never watched him, but she was very impressed with his advice on how to train your pooch.
How to train your pooch, right? He says, so leash up your pet. So leash up your pet and hit play.
I like that.
Your dogs will be tired and happy because you won't want to stop listening to this podcast.
Wow.
And then he ends with these words, Jeff.
Thank you both for all your great work, Buster.
Yeah.
Right.
That's nice.
That was very nice. I mean, most of his shout out was kind of about us.
It was.
Which is, slightly embarrassing.
Long overdue, you would say?
No, I mean, I want to know more about Buster. He seems like a great guy.
He is a great guy. Yeah. The guy, he's a mensch, right? You sit down and have a beer with this guy, you won't stop laughing.
Fantastic.
Just a side-splitting, fun-loving guy.
It's rare to meet people like that.
Oh, yeah. I wish I were one of those people. Although I wouldn't want to spend much time with myself if that were the case. No.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, too much enthusiasm and cheer. We have an opening quote, Jeff, don't we?
Yeah, you want me to tackle that?
Yeah, can you do that?
Right. So this, if the listener will remember, hopefully you listened to the previous Aeneid episode. I think we ended by talking about this business of the golden bow. Correct. And I was trying to make much of the fact that the bow resists. The Latin word there is cum tantem.
That's correct.
It's sticky. It resists.
Yeah, it's hesitant. Doesn't want to get pulled out.
It doesn't want to get pulled out. And then comparing that to what the Sibyl says, that if you are the man fate says you are, it will come easily.
That's right. We compared it to the lifting of Thor's hammer.
Yeah. Right. Which, how do you pronounce the name of that hammer?
I don't.
It's not. Is it Mjolnir?
Mjolnir, something like that.
That okay?
I have picked up Thor's screwdriver, the level once. I think I got it off the garage floor.
That one's named Carl.
But picking up that hammer, right? You have to be worthy or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
like Arthur and drawing the sword. Right?
Yeah, so you got to pull it out of the stone.
Exactly. Right. So it's one of those kind of folkloric. Kind of rites of passage. Right?
Correct.
If you can't do this, then you are not chosen.
Well, it's just like another classical reference. Would you like here?
Please.
Theseus, right, is actually the son of Aegeus, the king of Athens. He has to lift up that great rock, under which are his sword and his sandals that were hidden there. It's a test of his paternity.
Yes.
You lift up the rock, the feat of great strength. Now you are legitimately the son of the king.
Tokens of your identity.
Right.
It's Cinderella's slipper.
Did you have any of those in your coming of age and the Winkle coming of age? You've taught us about the nerdtastic moped before. You told us about that.
Yes. I mean, I had lots of moments that were character building.
Okay.
Right? I didn't.
Nothing like if I pass this test, now I'm a man, right?
I didn't sit astride the JCPenney Pinto moped and say, now, let me inherit my kingdom.
No, there wasn't anything.
No, there was
like
more
that.
pain to come.
Really?
Right. That was my ride I took. That was my catabasis.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, how about you? I mean, did you have kind of? Oh, yes. Now I am a man. I've done this.
Maybe when I had to fill out my own tax form for the first time. My first 1040, something like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't pleasant, but yeah, this is real now. I'm adulting.
You've crossed a threshold.
Correct. There's no going back.
Right.
Isn't there someone who can do this for me or just accidentally throw it away?
Right.
No, it's on you.
It's on you. Yeah.
So there was things like that.
Yeah.
My first A- in a Greek class.
Oh.
Yeah, after a long string of B+, A-. Okay, I've worked. Something's about to happen.
I thought you were going to say after a string of A. I thought there was some humble bragging going on the other side of the table here.
Well, I think it was humble bragging.
Yeah, okay.
Because I actually got up to an A-. But
Okay.
we've talked about this before.
I don't remember. It's
Yeah,
been 100 episodes, Dad. I can't remember everything. Right.
How I was, just a B+ at everything and not good at anything, mostly because of laziness.
So when you got that A-, you thought, okay,
I can do this.
It can turn it around.
Right. So that was a rite of passage kind of thing.
Yeah.
I pulled at that A- and it reluctantly gave way and broke off in my hand, you might say.
Yeah. No, I like that very much.
Thanks.
Way to pull it back.
Yes.
So one of the things that makes, of course, this rite of passage so interesting is that it doesn't really quite seem to fit the pattern, right? He doesn't easily lift the rock. He doesn't easily draw the sword from stone. It resists. So the question is, what does that mean, if anything? And so the opening quote here comes from an article called The Hesitation of the Golden Bough.
Okay, and this is by a man named Franz Steiner Verlag, is that right?
Exactly right.
I like that name.
German. Right?
Verlag. He's way past Nettleship.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So this comes from the journal Hermes from way back in 1968.
Wow, neither of us were alive
before
then.
your time and mine.
Yes.
Yep. And Mr. Verlag writes, it is naturally inviting to connect the hesitation of the bow with some of the other elements in the Aeneid that indicate a divided attitude to the destiny of Rome and the cost of empire. So that's kind of when I think I said in that previous episode.
I remember.
I thought I had this great idea that people had noticed before, but zillions of people have.
Yeah, and, well, in addition, though, when we get to the end of the epic, we have to talk about the various interpretations.
Yeah.
And it strikes me that this interpretation coming out in 1968, what's happening in 1968? That's the fevered pitch of the Vietnam War.
True.
Right? And so I don't think Verlag is an American necessarily, I'm not sure, but there's a lot of doubt about the value of empire and order and warfare. So it seems to me, I'm getting ahead of us a little bit, that a lot of the interpretations of the Aeneid from this era have jettisoned the traditional interpretation, which is that Aeneas is full-on celebrating the Augustan regime. I'm sorry, did I say Aeneas? Vergil is full-on celebrating the Augustan regime. And instead, these interpretations are questioning Vergil's motives and alignment with Augustus's ideas. And he's secretly trying to subvert the whole Pax Augusta by saying, well, look at the casualties, that line the landscape.
Yeah.
And I have to say, as I will later, I'm skeptical of that a little bit because the interpretations, they kind of fit the generation too closely.
That's a really interesting idea that, even Mr. Verlag never intended that. He's speaking through the lens of his own times, right? So, no, I'm very persuaded by that. I think I would say that, I'm with you. I think the interpretation of saying that Vergil is subverting the Augustan project, it goes a little bit too far.
Right.
I certainly see Vergil that's saying, yes, this great destiny, but also look at the great cost.
Yes.
So he's being honest about the cost of this, while at the same time celebrating the Augustan project. It can be two things.
Yes, that's true. Right. As a counterpoint, some of the interpretations coming at the end of the 1940s, some of those interpretations that we will look at, they're rosily patriotic, right?
Coming off the heels of World War II.
Exactly. The forces of good have crushed the forces of evil after a long slog. Well, that may be true of that generation, but again, one has to be very wary of anachronism, reading back into Vergil's motives, something that's really appealing to our own time.
Right.
Like the feminist readings of the Aeneid.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Right.
I don't buy it.
Right. Yeah, it kind of comes down to, it's something I've often wrestled with even in my own scholarship is, what am I trying to show? Am I trying to show what this epic is about from the context of its times?
Right.
I think many scholars would say, well, that context, you can't recover it anyway.
They would say it's impossible to do so perfectly, and therefore it's not worth trying.
Not worth trying. But then there's been a lot of, I don't know if you've seen some of the academic scuttlebutt that's out there in the media right now, but kind of
Are the butts scuttling?
Oh, they're constantly scuttling.
Okay.
Yes. But kind of the idea of presentism.
Yes.
Right. So you interpret these sources through the lens of your own time because that's the only lens that you have.
And that you are in fact supposed to do that.
Right. Yeah. So, but that comes with its own,
of course,
major pitfalls, right?
At that point, I would just throw up my hands and say, let's do something else.
Right.
Turn on Netflix.
Why bother? So yeah. So my approach has always been like I think the past is recoverable to a degree.
Right.
You admit kind of the biases that you have, and you do the best you can.
Yes.
Right. But that's very interesting. Let me continue with Verloc's quote here. So he says, on this view, the bow would appear as another victim of the energetic advance of the conquering hero, cum tantem, in seeming to endow the branch with a will, consciousness, and a quasi-animate life of its own. That's interesting. So the branch itself doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah? You're not so sure about that?
It's clever. But keep going.
Yeah.
You don't want me to interrupt.
Yeah, brings its fate even closer to that of the human victims. The bow's removal would then stand as the counterpart in the natural world to the violence done to the Saturnian peace of remote Italy by the invaders, the reliquiae Danium, the rest of the Trojans, who carry with them the bitter experience of war, defeat, and exile. The hesitation of the bow, plucked at the hero's first entrance to the new land, perhaps foreshadows the sentiment which appears especially strongly in the catalog of the Italian heroes at the end of Book 7. Book 7. The regretful knowledge of what is lost when quiet centuries of calm and innocence are suddenly awakened to action and progress. Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of he's saying it's the colonial problem, right?
Correct.
Yes.
It's a little too clever by half,
as
the saying goes. Well, it isn't the case that all over the Italian landscape, it was an idyllic world of peacefulness and quiet that Aeneas and his crew disrupts.
Right.
That's not it.
It is
that is the noble savage.
The noble savage archetype, right? Yeah.
Once again, it's possible to honor the natives and the indigenous persons and not infantilize them,
right,
by saying they're fundamentally different than us.
Yeah. And I think even from the perspective of Vergil, an upper class Roman, tapped by Augustus to write this, that would be part of kind of his interpretive arsenal seems very far fetched to me.
It does to me too.
Yeah. All right, but I do think that I do think there's something with the hesitation of the bow, and I think we'll hang on to that. We'll see if that idea kind of pops up as we get into the second half of the epic.
Okay.
All right.
And so we're going to get right into it then, aren't we?
Let's do it.
And what we're going to give the listener today, if they have endured with us this far, all the way up to episode 99, is that we're going to go into the dark interior of the underworld.
Right.
Go down that descent, that catabasis, the catabino, and check out the residents, the denizens, you might say, of the underworld. Get a little bit of a survey of who's there and how they're spending their time. And we're going to start by going down to the river, right? Take me to the river.
Take me to the river. Exactly, right. You know that Talking Heads song?
I don't.
Okay.
The Talking Heads is a musical group?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
This is rock and or roll?
Wait a minute. Yeah, it is. But maybe the subject for another conversation.
Okay, but they have a song called Take Me to the River?
Yeah, it's a good song.
Is it based on a kind of, a Negro spiritual, an African American?
It is kind of. It is kind of it's a Take Me to the River, Wash Me in the Water. So it's kind of a baptismal
Definitely.
Kind of idea.
Yeah, like the great scene in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yes, exactly. But in our case, the river is the river Styx.
Okay.
Right. So when we last left our hero, he was standing there with sword drawn. He was hearing dogs howling.
Right.
The earth was tremoring, and he had to take these first steps into the deep dark.
Yeah,
right?
like the Carole King song, right?
Which one is it?
I feel the earth move under my feet.
Great song.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And the Sibyl is going with him. Sibyl she stays there as his guide.
Okay, now I'm asking a question, the answer to which you know, but our audience may not. Will the Sibyl remain Aeneas' guide throughout his whole journey in the underworld?
I believe no.
No, she's substituted by Anchises.
Right. So when he meets his father, ultimately, then she says, "My work here is done."
Yeah, she passes the baton, the prophetic baton.
She's also the one. Apparently, she's carrying the bow. So she kind of puts it in her European carry-all, zips it shut, and produces it at the proper moment, as we'll see.
Right. Great.
Yep. So so this is it's one of these. I can't. And forgive me, listener, if I'm repeating myself from the previous Aeneid episode. But
you're not going to say liminal, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
Right. I will. I'm sure at some point.
All right.
But not now. This part of the Italian landscape by Cumae and the volcano there. It reminds me a lot of the area of in northwestern Greece, Epirus.
Oh no, Dodona and Epirus, right? The region is Epirus.
Epirus, but it reminds me of kind of the Necromention area where there
right by Dodona, the big shrine.
Yes, and where there are rivers, there is an Acheron, there is a Styx.
Yeah, Phlegathon.
So this is one of these areas on the physical geographical landscape that the ancients indeed associated with the underworld. So it's where kind of, story meets, the rubber hits the road, so to speak.
Correct.
Yep. So there is an area there called Avernus, with the birdless place where even the birds won't fly. Mm-hmm. So this is a very specific geographical location. There, Cumae was a real place. There was a Sibyl. There was an oracle there. This isn't just the fiction from Virgil's
No, there
mind,
were books. The Sibylline books were written down and carried and stored in Rome and destroyed at some point in the past. But this was a real business, like Delphi.
Yes, exactly right. So Aeneas does what he's done throughout the first 6 books. He's religiously correct. You've got to please all the various Stygian powers. He makes a sacrifice to Hecate and many other the kind of minor deities that kind of rule their own kind of corners of this universe. Mm-hmm. He draws his sword and he gingerly enters into this landscape.
Once again, the Department of Motor Vehicles here in the state of Michigan, or the Secretary of State's office. Yeah. When you go there, right, they have tried to streamline it. You can get in the queue using your cell phone, using Twitter and so forth. But when you get there, my approach is always, don't make anybody irritated. Pull the number, wait in line, right? Go up to the counter, behave yourself. This is not the time to try to be witty or clever or to impress anybody.
Right.
Because they have absolute power. Right. They can send you to the back of the line.
Exactly.
And you can't go to some other Department of Motor Vehicles to get your car registered. This is it.
Right.
So that for me is the metaphor, right?
Yes.
Aeneas's devotion to ritual.
Yeah.
Kind of a mindless, very bureaucratic, let's just do this right.
Right.
Is because there are no options.
Exactly. It's like going through customs or TSA.
Right.
Right. Just follow the rules.
That's right.
Do your song and dance and get through.
That's right. Because you don't have any choice.
Right. So Dave, you want to read us some Latin here?
I would love to.
Let's hear it.
Thank you. So this is line 273. Vestibulant ipsum primis quin faucibus orci, luctus et ultri case passuere cubilia curae, palentes quabitant morbi tristisque senectus, et mediset malasvada fames ac turpis agestas, terribiles vi su formae letumque labosque. I love that internal rhyme there, letumque labosque.
That's great.
Tum consanguineus leti soperet mala et, oops, I messed it up. Oh, flew too close to the sun. Tum consanguineus leti soperet malamentis, gaudia mortiferum quad versin lumina bellum. Oh, limina bellum. There you go, Jeff.
Yeah, we go.
Ferdrei quel menidum talamet discordia demens. And last, vi perdeum cri nem vitiis innexa cruentis.
There's some horrifying images and personae there, right?
Incredible.
Right. Well done. I mean, there was lots of elisions there.
There were a lot of elisions.
Yeah.
Which, as the listener may know, an elision is when two Latin words in the line, they have a special combination of vowels and consonants, and so the words are collapsed together. And you have to say them with a little more rapidity.
Right.
What would be the musical equivalent? Because that happens, right? Where two notes kind of blend or they carry over a measure.
Right. I mean, that's very common in certainly pop music, right? If you need to cramp something to fit the meter, I can't think of an example off the top of my head.
Well, there's a number of words that are contracted, like ever becomes air, never becomes ne'er.
Right.
Ain't, right? Mm-hmm. I have no problem with that, right? Am not. This is cumbersome. Let's get it down to one syllable.
Right.
Ain't. Or in it.
In it. Yeah.
It's kind of like a contraction.
Right.
Isn't it? Three syllables.
I've also heard, like, if you want to contract I'm going to, it's just I'm a. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, those are contractions to try to fit things in where there's not enough space.
Right, exactly. And they can also kind of project a kind of style too.
Yes.
Like I'm a do that. Right.
Okay.
You're gonna now you're hip with the kids, right? Right. So let me I'll give you Stanley Lombardo's wonderful translation and a bit more too.
All right.
So just before the entrance, in the very jaws of Orcus, grief and avenging cares have set their beds. Pale diseases dwell there, sad old age, fear, hunger, the tempter, and foul poverty, all fearful shapes, and death and toil and death's brother sleep, guilty joys, and on the threshold opposite, lethal war. The furies in iron cells and mad strife have here snaky hair entwined with bloody bands. In the middle, a huge elm stands, spreading its aged branches, the abode of false dreams that cling to the bottom of every leaf. At the doors are stabled the monstrous shapes of centaurs and biform Scyllas, and Briareus with 100 heads, and the Lernaean Hydra hissing horribly, and the Chimera armed with flame, Gorgons, Harpies, and the hybrid shade of Geryon. I'm getting dizzy here. It's like the ultimate haunted house,
It's terrible.
Suddenly panicked, Aeneas drew his sword and turned its edge against their advance. And if his guide, that's our Sibyl, had not observed that they were hollow, bodiless forms, flitting images, he would have charged and slashed vainly through the empty shadows. So Aeneas is freaked out by these, what he takes to be kind of real monsters.
Right.
And the Sibyl tells him they're just phantoms.
Right.
Now, I don't. Maybe this is too much of a tangent, but I was just in my myth class this morning talking about. We were talking about Odyssey Book 11.
Yeah,
right? That's the catabasis there.
That's right.
Where Odysseus has his own experience in the underworld, and a student asked me. He says, "To what degree would an ancient Greek have said, 'Oh yes, this is what I believe'?" Right? To what
in
degree,
other words, they're looking for. Did they really think in religious or philosophical terms that these things were true?
Right. So I had said to the class early on, when I was introducing Homer, I was saying, the Iliad and the Odyssey in many ways comes as close to we get to kind of sacred text for the ancient Greeks, which I think is true. And so the student was kind of piggybacking on that and saying, okay, if that's true, how much can we take these ideas in Book 11 as kind of a template for what an actual, Joe and Jane Athenian would have believed?
Right. Or Roman. I mean, you're talking about Homer.
Right. So it's similar kind of thing. Like, how much is this poetic conceit? Is this kind of over the top? He's entertaining his audience. And to what degree would a passage like this reflect kind of a real horror about what's waiting on the other side of the veil?
In my estimation, Jeff, that student asks an excellent question.
Okay.
And the answer to which we will probably never have in any definitive form.
That's more or less what I told him.
Yeah. But here's a little bit of general guidance, you might say, things I've learned. Take them with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. There's two really helpful books that I've read on this topic. One on Roman religion by a woman named Valerie M. Warrior, which gives it's a great name.
That is a great name.
Valerie Warrior.
Wow.
Gives a broad survey of the concept of religion among the Romans, getting into both the public aspects and the private, which for a Roman, again, practically indistinguishable.
Yeah.
Right? You believe what the state believes. And then secondly, André Jean Festugière, some French guy. It's the best I can do. We've quoted this one on the air before, and the volume is Personal Religion Among the Greeks. I think in terms of answering the student's question, that second one is better because it tries to tease out, okay, these were the public things that the Greeks believed, and then here's what we know about private piety.
Yeah.
So my conviction is no matter how different the theistic and doctrinal beliefs are, you're going to find very similar practice. So I am a Christian, you are too. So our practice today is based on a different set of beliefs, right? And aimed at a different God than that of the Greeks and Romans.
Right.
And so hopefully that will be reflected in, practices of piety. But on the whole, what separates, theists today from ancient theists is not so much practice in every instance as in the object of what you believe in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Yeah, I would add to that. And one thing I offered to the student as well is that I think that in terms of like the details, like, could you go to a place and make a sacrifice and expect ghosts to come towards you?
Right.
But I would say, I think that what I do see in like the underground, the undergirding, say, philosophy or theology of like Hesiod,
right,
there's a bleakness at the root of it.
Oh yeah,
right?
There's no hope.
There's no hope, and
it's very different.
And so I would say, like, if you could look at maybe like the Greek development of like the mystery religions,
right,
as a pushing back against that. So I said maybe they wouldn't share a belief in all the details, but that the idea that there's kind of at best a kind of bleak unknown that the state religion couldn't really address or didn't. And maybe we could see that kind of pushback in things like the private mystery cults as a way of that, okay, the Greeks they're responding to something that was a shared belief.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I could say something here a little bit more dogmatic,
please,
as is my want.
Yes.
I find that a lot of Christians I interact with believe that they themselves are fundamentally different than their pagan predecessors. And I don't think this is especially true, right? So how am I different as a Christian from, the Roman worshipers of the past? Well, my prayers are pretty similar. They tend to be pretty similar. They tend to be not animated by high ideals, of my belief in a perfect God. They tend to be pretty selfish a lot of the time. You know? So what did the Romans pray for? I don't want to get sick. Save me from financial ruin. Make sure my kid gets into this or that college, right?
Right.
So our prayers, though we believe in a different God, they're really, really similar.
Yes.
And the reason that I think it's worth making this point is the difference between a true and false religion has less to do with the individuals practicing it than with, the individual who constitutes that religion.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Sure, absolutely.
It's easy to be very proud, especially as post-Enlightenment people.
Right.
Those Romans were all superstitious pagans. Are you sure you're not quite superstitious?
Exactly right. That's always worth examining. Sure. And I think that for many Christians, and even in my own thinking, I find myself kind of fall into this trap of not really accepting the idea. Oh, I'm saved by grace. There's nothing that I can do to kind of affect my own salvation.
Right.
But you fall into kind of the divine Santa Claus trap, right?
Yeah.
It's a checklist.
Of
right?
course.
I need to keep the Pax Deorum through my actions today.
Yeah.
I think there's something very human of kind of falling into that.
Absolutely.
Like I have to earn my own way to this. Right. And so in that way, that's not different from the ancient approach at all.
Yeah, because human beings will be human beings.
Yes.
Throughout history. That's my conviction, at least.
Right. Yeah. That's good stuff.
All right.
Yep. All right. So
did you want to talk about this huge elm tree?
What's going on there? When I read this morning, I completely forgot about that. But it's where false dreams are kept.
Yes, in the middle. This is Lombardo. You already read it, but we'll repeat it. A huge elm stands, spreading its aged branches, the abode of false dreams that cling to the bottom of every leaf. That is so evocative,
right?
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is really
incredible.
And I think there's a bit of foreshadowing. We won't get to it today, but when Aeneas leaves the underworld, he exits by a particular gate.
That's right. There's the gate of horn and
the gate of ivory.
Right.
And he leaves by the gate of the false dream.
Right.
And so maybe there's a little bit of foreshadowing here. But I was thinking too. What does driving over here, what might the elm symbolize? The oak with Jupiter. I mean, is there a resonance there that you recognize?
I don't know. I think the elm, not really. I'd just be speculating. But
yeah.
I think the elm is a tree known for its age, its beauty, and its size.
So it fits.
So not different than the oak, I suppose, but not associated with a particular deity.
Right. So there's not a layer there.
No.
Okay.
But clinging to the underside of a leaf are false dreams.
Yeah.
These false dreams, I can just picture it. They come off the leaves and they flit down into people's minds while they sleep.
Yeah.
Right? And entice or deceive them with all kinds of crazy things.
Yes.
Disturbing things.
Right.
When you wake up from a dream, right, there's a moment where you say, you're totally convinced, at least this is my experience, by the rationality of the world you were in. But then within a few moments, you've either forgotten it entirely or thought, that is crazy.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
How could I moments ago have thought this makes perfect sense?
Right.
Because now it's ridiculous.
Exactly. And here's where I'm going to bring up liminality.
All right.
So I was just talking about this in my class, is that we've all experienced that, like what you were talking about, that kind of moment where you're kind of coming out of the dream state, but you're not quite awake. You're kind of in that weird in-between world where you don't really know where you are.
Right.
And you're like you said, you're clinging to the narrative that you're just living through. Right. So, and then you wake up and you either forget it or you say, wow, that was nuts.
Right. And this is Aeneas's entire experience in book 6.
Yeah.
Very much like Queen's Reich, Jeff Tate. Right, Silent Lucidity.
Yes, the only song that I know by Queensryche.
Yes,
that most people know by Queensryche. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah. So this what I found interesting to compare this underworld with Homer's underworld. Vergil seems to suggest there's a lot more slippage between that world and our world.
By slippage, you mean can pass between them more easily?
Exactly right. So that one of the first images of these leaves heavy with false dreams. Ready to kind of fall off and make their way to our world, is that the Vergilian underworld seems to suggest there's a lot more connection between the next world and ours than I think the Homeric world, which leaves a lot of that just mysterious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Tradition has developed, right? Again, the time has passed between Homer, say 750, 780 BC.
Yeah.
Vergil now 700-800 years later. A lot of poets in between.
Yeah.
Specifically the Greek tragedians and Apollonius.
Right.
So there's been development.
But don't you think there's also the differences between, say, the Homeric and Vergilian underworlds also reflect a deep cultural difference?
Yes.
The Romans as the great engineers, the builders, the organizers.
Right.
It makes sense.
A desire to regularize and systematize things.
Right. So it makes sense that their underworld would be a shopping mall.
That's right.
Whereas the Greeks, perhaps, culturally speaking, much more comfortable with paradox and mystery. Right. I think there's a general kind of cultural divide there.
Yes. And speaking of cultural divides, it's time for the ads.
Let's do it. This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by the great folks at Ratio Coffee, and Mark Helwig in particular.
That's correct.
He's the genius behind this, right?
Yeah, the entrepreneur.
Right. So do you know, did Mark Kennedy handcraft and design all that stuff? Or does he have a crack team?
Well, he has a crack team, but he had to do all of the initial grunt work.
Man.
The guy is not an engineer.
Yeah.
He is also not an artist. This is not to say he doesn't have a lot of those skills, but he had a basic liberal arts training. So this is not a commercial for what you can do with the liberal arts. Maybe it's a commercial for what you can do when you put your mind to it.
Right.
But Mark just said the coffee machine, the home coffee machine, has not really advanced in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something about that. He sat down and did the hard work, and he had support, but he's come up with really a work of art.
He has, and knowing that background makes it even more impressive what he's been able to do.
Lots of trial and error, studying the designs of others. It's how many attempts did it get Edison to make the light bulb?
Right, or the Wright brothers to get off the ground?
Right, I think 600 different filaments he tried.
Yeah.
Mark, he's done a lot better.
That's fantastic.
I just compared him to Edison.
And I compared him to Orville and Wilbur. That's fantastic. Yeah. And I do so proudly. So so this morning, my ratio 8, it's a beautiful work of art that sits there on my countertop, it produces the perfect cup of coffee for me every single morning. I go from the bloom to the brew to the ready. I pour a cup of coffee. I bring it up to my wife. She's always happy to get a cup from that machine.
Would you say that the best part of her waking up is ratio in her cup?
Oh, we can't steal that. Isn't that some other? Isn't that like Pfluger's coffee?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Did she give you a dark, sparkling look?
It was great, and my cup was great too. Dave, what about you? Did you use your ratio machine this morning?
Oh, yes, I did. Yeah, I did, for sure. I ground up the beans. I got a nice, strong grind.
Yeah.
And no more mass produced coffee for me.
No,
it went up through the metallic veins.
Yes.
Where are we headed here? We're headed to the brackish tang. Wait for it, listener. Wait for it.
Yes.
And the water came down at about 200 degrees Fahrenheit into the cone.
Through the Fibonacci head?
Through the Fibonacci shower head.
Yes.
Right. And then, boom, what did we have?
You had the perfect cup of coffee.
No, we had the bloom stage.
Oh, the bloom stage. That's right.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm getting too excited about
Good
this.
grief.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, listener, if you want to
No, we're not done.
We're not? What's going on?
No. And then the water went down into
Yeah.
the hulking flagon, right? The kind of thing that you could store plutonium in.
Of course.
And after the off-gassing.
Yeah.
And what was it that was off-gassed?
It was the nasty CO2, which you don't want anywhere near your coffee.
No, you don't. That's
No.
what makes it harsh and bitter.
That's where the tang of brackishness comes
That's
into,
right. This was sweet and mellow, like a glass of wine.
Yeah, every single time.
Okay, now we can go to the
So,
good stuff.
listeners, do yourself a favor. Go to ratiocoffee.com, RATIO. Type in the coupon code ANCOV4.
That's correct. So that's ad nauseum, ANCO, coffee, and Victor 4.
Victor 4, and that will get you 15% off either the ratio 6 or the ratio 8, or both if you want to get them.
And you might say, Jeff, Dave, this is not an inexpensive coffee machine. Well, you're right, but a lot of you brew coffee every day, serve it to your guests and friends. This thing is an investment.
It is.
It does not wear, it does not tear. It lasts a long time.
Long time. So, yeah, it's worth it. Check it out.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is also brought to you, dear gentle listener, by the good folks at Hackett Publishing. Hackett. Jeff, where are Hackett's offices?
They currently have offices in Indianapolis, Indiana, and also Cambridge, Massachusetts.
And how long, Jeff, have they... So this is a quiz, quiz.
Yeah.
How long have they been purveying high-quality, inexpensive literature to the public?
I believe that this is their 50th anniversary year.
This would be their golden bough, you might say.
Yes, exactly.
Their golden anniversary.
Yep.
And what do you like about Hackett? And you can't answer. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
It's part of the test. You may not mention the attractive covers in your answer.
Oh, I can, but it's one of the things I love the most, though.
No, I don't go all liminal on us.
Okay.
The cover is liminal. It's when you get on the inside, you get the juicy pulp of the book.
Right. Well, let me tell you this. So,
Okay.
had a student come to me and said they were having a little trouble getting the particular textbooks for a class of theirs. And I said, what's the trouble? He said, well, it's not so much the trouble, it's how much they cost. And he showed me this paperback textbook, which was going to cost this young person $185.
You've got to be kidding me.
And it was just criminal. Right.
$185?
Yes.
That's the cost of one credit at the institution.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously. So that's exactly the problem. you're not going to find it Hackett.
Okay.
So I would say if I can't talk about the attractive covers,
You can't.
It's
You can't mention the cover of the Bacchae with Elvis on it.
my favorite.
You can't mention the Moonshot, which is what's the Odyssey.
The Odyssey, another good one.
You can't mention the Normandy Landing, which is the Iliad.
That's right. I can't mention any of these.
What's on the cover of the Aeneid?
It's the Vietnam Memorial.
Oh yeah, you can't mention that either.
In DC. Yes, exactly.
It's all a big litotes.
Yes. So having not mentioned any of that.
That's
stuff,
right.
High quality translations and very affordable.
Right.
Right.
And would you say a narrow range of titles on
a
offer?
A wide range. You're going to find. I think you're going to find stuff that you can't even find on that watery website.
That's correct.
Bromadzon or something like that. Yeah.
Careful.
Sorry.
Careful.
Yeah. So they have a huge selection. It's not just the classics. They have a great collection of classics. They have multiple translators for the same book.
Mm-hmm. World philosophy. They've got Latin American studies. They have Asian studies.
Islamic studies.
Incredible span.
Yep. So the listener should, again, do themselves a favor. Go to hackettpublishing.com. You find the books that you want. Take some time to look around. They have a huge selection. And if you type in the coupon code AN2022, what does that get them, Dave?
They're going to get, 2% off and 3 times the cost of shipping?
20% off.
20% off.
And
free shipping.
Free shipping.
You can't beat that.
You cannot.
You get 2 things out of that. You get some great quality literature inexpensively, and you also get the opportunity to support this podcast.
That's right.
Which we really appreciate.
We do.
So we can keep purveying to you these interesting tales of classical lit and the world.
Yes, hackettpublishing.com.
All right, Jeff, as we get back into it, we're still descending the escalator down to the main floor of this sprawling mall, right? And what are we going to see here in the Underworld?
Well, and so in the passage that we were just referring to before the break, he sees all kinds of different, kind of famous monsters. It's a who's who of kind of the gruesome gallery.
Right.
Centaur, Scylla, the Hydra, Geryon, the Gorgons are all there.
Hybrid Geryon. This is the triple-bodied monster.
Yeah, most famous for one of Heracles' labors.
Correct. Heracles stole his cattle in Spain and then killed him.
He did, and his dog.
He's got 3 bodies, right?
Yep.
And his dog only has 2 bodies, Orthrus.
Orthrus, right, right. Yeah, but he had gunned them down and then had to drive the cattle all the way across Europe back to Greece.
Yeah,
right.
Big task.
Yep. So we see him down there. The Harpies is kind of the ultimate kind of creepy haunted house. But we, as we just learned, they're phantoms.
Right.
And the Sibyl helps Aeneas realize that. But then he gets to the river.
Okay.
Right. And who takes you across the river? I think as I found with my myth students, it's one of these things that a lot of people know. Even if they can't name him, they say, "Oh yeah, you have to get in the boat."
That's correct.
And get across.
Take me tonight to the river and wash my illusions away.
Something like that. Yes. Well,
did you get the reference?
It's like half.
That's the song by Styx, by the band Styx.
Which song?
Show Me the Way.
Oh, Show Me the Way. Yeah.
I'm sure you hate it, right?
It's awful.
So much schmaltz.
It's awful. There's some Styx songs I like, but that is so cheeseball, right? But yes, by the aptly named band, right? Styx. So Charon is his name, and here too, I think this is interesting. What kind of happens to the figure of Charon? If you kind of go from the Greeks to the Romans. So if you look at the way that Charon is represented in art, and so as you know, the vases were often used to kind of mark graves, right? And so
a funerary vase,
funerary vase
that was there to honor the dead,
right? And so you often have images of Hermes, who's your soul guide,
he's the Psychopampos,
yep, and then Charon as well. And if you look at the depictions of Charon, more often than not, he's kind of a guy with kind of a ratty cloak, and he's got a cap that marks him as a slave, and he's just kind of a schlubby guy that has kind of a nasty job to do.
Okay.
But when we hear about him,
say maybe like, be careful. I don't know. So, never mind. I was thinking of someone who's got a nasty job to do. I was thinking of the guy that holds the sign along the highway.
Oh yeah.
As for the road repair, the person just stands there holding the sign.
Oh yeah.
Stop, go. I'm not sure it's possible to look any less interested in your work.
That is an awful job.
But the reason I didn't want to say it is because hopefully we have some listeners like that, and you called them schlubby, so I didn't want to do that.
Exactly. I think by extension, you're the one who called him schlubby. Right? I was talking about Charon himself. But in myth class today, we were talking about like Sisyphus. You know, how so many punishments in the underworld they're not so much kind of raw physical torture.
They're futility.
Endless drudgery.
Correct.
Right. And my students were kind of sharing their experience of, haven't we all had jobs like that?
Oh, yeah.
Working in a factory and just assembling the same part
right.
All day.
Right.
Or the guy turning the sign, like you were saying. Charon kind of has a job like that, back and forth. He takes the same route every day.
Or maybe it's when you're grading papers in a class and every student misspells the word Iliad.
Oh, exactly. Do the
Puts
double L.
2 or 3 L's.
Exactly right. The Iliad.
Yeah. So what I've taken to do is putting little frowny faces next to student errors. Yeah, I've taken to doing that because I want them to see I have an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
To their error.
You're grading with emojis.
Yes, it makes it makes me frown. So
exactly. It's just a little piece of me died.
Yeah,
right.
It's got to be personal, right? The age we live in, everything is personal. So it's
Yeah.
not just an error. Look what you did to your teacher. You made him frown.
Exactly.
Maybe that'll motivate them.
Maybe
to take some of the L's out of Iliad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could break that down. Just the one L, please. So what I was trying to come around to is if you compare that everyday workman, blue collar kind of depiction of Charon with the way that Vergil describes him, we've already moved to kind of a more kind of glowing-eyed, skeletal, demon-like figure.
Moving toward the representation, say in Dante.
Yes, exactly right.
And easily the most famous depiction, would be the one of Michelangelo.
Oh yes,
from the Sistine Chapel.
Sistine Chapel, right. If
you haven't seen that, listener, you should really do yourself a favor and Google that. It is one of the most interesting, disturbing things you'll ever see.
It is. It's quite wonderfully awful.
Yes.
Right.
It's something that is meant to be partly terrifying, but you just can't take your eyes off it.
Yeah.
It's gripping.
It is, very much so. And what's happening with Dante and Michelangelo, I think you're also seeing kind of these ancient traditions becoming Christianized,
Correct.
right? And so, especially if you compare like the Greek Charon to Michelangelo's Charon, kind of that full kind of literal demonization of the character has taken place.
Would you like me to make another mildly dogmatic point here?
Of course, I always love it. Yeah.
All right. So some people say, well, the Christian tradition about hell in the underworld, that's all borrowed from the pagan world. But they're only half right? So the Christian scriptures are filled with language and discussion of the next life and its blessings and punishments, right? But the aesthetics of it is pretty thin, right?
Yes.
There are things like the place where the worm does not die, the place where fire consumes, but they're very brief kinds of comments.
Right.
So it is not the case that the Christian tradition has borrowed all those ideas from the pagan world.
Yeah.
But I think more accurate is they have illustrated those ideas with images and such, like you were just saying.
Exactly.
Borrowed from the pagan world.
Exactly right.
That's an important distinction.
Right. So even in the Disney Hercules, have you seen it?
Yes, parts of it. I've read about 40 student papers about it, so I'd say that's close.
Right. Yes, I tell them that they're not allowed to kind of to use that as part of their thesis anymore.
No, right? I'm going to run out of emojis.
Right. That's right. But if you remember that the Hades figure, voiced by James Woods, I believe, he's got the fire kind of from his fingertips.
Right.
It's very much kind of a demonized version of Hades.
Yeah, a Dante-esque.
A Dante-esque version of Hades, right? Where if you look at what we can kind of recover of how the Greeks kind of worshipped and envisioned Hades,
right?
That aspect is not really there.
No, he's violent and selfish, but there isn't some notion of giving out punishments.
Exactly.
In fact, most of the portrayals show Proserpina.
Yeah.
Proserpina.
She's foregrounded.
Correct.
Yep, exactly. So he's just a guy with lousy real estate, right? He drew the short straw.
Right.
So we expect him to be grumpy.
Right. When he and the other two brothers divided up the jurisdictions of the world.
Yeah. But it doesn't turn him into kind of a satanic figure.
No.
Right. So I always find those borrowings and those changing, those tweaks over time very, very interesting. And we were speaking of biases that you kind of bring to that. I think there is kind of that westernized kind of almost extra biblical Christian lens that we naturally put to this. Oh, he's the god of the dead. Well, he must be some kind of demon figure, right? And so that's always good to kind of push back and kind of say, well, okay, what was it?
Draw some distinctions.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I think someone says, he who distinguishes well teaches well.
Yes, I like that.
Okay.
So we see the souls kind of flocking down to the shore and struggling. They want to be first in line. They all want to get into the boat, and Charon's kind of beating them back. He only takes, and Aeneas recognizes he only takes a few.
Is there a height requirement? Is it like the
if you want to get on
point or something, you want to get on the boat, you must be at least this corrupt.
Oh man, there's a nice parody waiting to be made. Like, what would the little sign be? Or you have to be taller than Charon's pole.
Yeah, you have to have committed this many sins to get on the boat.
So Aeneas doesn't quite know what's going on, and so the Sibyl explains. And so she says, no, listen, you have to have the proper burial rites if you want to get on the boat. And that's the only ones that Charon can take. So I think that we see that in the Greek tradition as well, is that while the underworld is bleak, Achilles says to Odysseus, listen, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
I'd rather be the lowliest slave than the king over the dead.
That's right.
But there is a sense as bad as that is, it's infinitely worse to be stuck between, right? If you don't have the burial rites, that's even worse of a punishment than kind of sitting in the DMV.
Yeah, or the DMZ, right? It's the demilitarized
There
zone
you go.
between the two realms.
Yes.
The realm of the dead and the realm of the living.
Right.
Trapped.
So it reminds us of Elpenor from the Odyssey, and of course we just had that scene where is it Marcellus? I believe that they have to. His body is found on the beach, and they have to bury it.
It doesn't sound right.
Maybe I'm getting the name wrong, but at the beginning of book 6,
Maecenas.
Maecenas, sorry.
It took me a second. I couldn't remember either.
Yeah. And
who does the show prep here anyway?
Yeah, goodness gracious. Yeah.
Let's fire that guy.
Right. I'm on the verge of apologizing, but not quite. Right. So the Sibyl says that those have to wander unburied for 100 years before they can take the next steps. And then he sees all of these people from his past. And so here again, the Homeric tag, just like Odysseus encounters a number of people from his past, he sees a lot of his friends that were lost at sea, and who are whose bodies are floating or at the seafloor unburied, and he weeps for them.
All my life in books written pages, live and learn from fools and from sages. Dream on.
Dream on, exactly.
There you go.
Right.
Isn't that reminiscent of this?
It is. I like that.
Okay.
That's another song.
I'm vying for the title of Johnny Pop here.
That's pretty good, right? So I when that song comes on the radio,
you always turn it off.
No, but not because I think it's a terrible song. It's because Joe Perry's guitar is out of tune, and I can't do it.
You can't listen to off-key music.
They should have re-recorded that.
You've been listening to my off-key rantings for 99 episodes now.
Yeah, and I've been meaning to talk to you about it. So one of the figures that he sees there is the ghost of Palinurus, which the audience will remember is the ship pilot who fell off.
Got thrown into the drink as a sacrifice to Neptune.
Exactly. And Aeneas addresses him. How about a little more Latin here?
Absolutely. Okay. This is line 341. This is where it starts. Sic prior ad loquitur quis te Palinura deordrum eirdrepavit no bis medio qua sub aequora mersit dic acanamque mehi falax haudanta repertus hoc unord responsane mum de lucid Apollo qui forte ponting columem finisque canebat ventur drausonios en haec promissa fides est.
Very nicely done.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Thank you for the compliment, but honestly, the very nicely done belongs to Vergil. This is so beautiful.
Yeah.
I just have to effuse a little bit about the beauty of this language.
I love the two imperatives there. Dic aga. Like,
right.
Come on, tell me.
Get to it.
Get to
Dic
it.
aga.
Right. It's so desperate.
That's what I want to say at the DMV, right? When they're about to hand me my new license plate.
Dic aga.
Dic aga.
Right. That's going to get you tossed, though.
Yeah. Come on, get to the point.
So this is Lombardo again, which translates, again, and this is Aeneas speaking. Palinurus, what god tore you from us and plunged you into the open sea? Apollo, never before found false, deluded me when he foretold that you would escape the sea and reach Ausonia. Okay, so apparently there was that doesn't seem to fit with the prophecy.
Right.
And we know the rule of prophecies, they have to come true.
Right.
So Palinurus speaks and explains. He says, Delphi did not mislead you, my captain, nor did any god drown me. The rudder I was holding to steer our course ripped apart, and as I fell headlong, I dragged it down with me. I swear by the wild sea, I was not so afraid for myself as for your ship. After that, stripped of its gear and its pilot overboard, it might founder and sink in the heavy weather. 3 stormy nights the south wind drove me over boundless seas. So we learned that Penelus didn't just drown right away.
No,
he's floating out there. That's awful.
Like those many movies with sharks and swimmers and so forth.
Yeah. That makes my skin crawl. Right. As the 4th dawn broke, I rode the crest of a wave and sighted Italy. I fought my way toward land and thought I had safety in my grasp. I hooked my fingers on a crag of shore, but weighed down by my dripping clothes, I was easy prey for a band of marauders.
Let's stop a minute.
Yeah.
Why would the gods do this to him?
I don't know.
This is awful.
Exactly.
They allow him after 4 days to float all the way to shore. He grips the land, and then what happens?
And then he's kidnapped.
He's a band of marauders. Beat him senseless.
This is awful. Yeah. Wind and surf now roll my body along the tide line. So the marauders killed him.
Right.
Yeah. And by the sweet light in the air of heaven, by your father, by the promise Iulus holds, save me from these woes, Aeneas unconquered. Right. So he's begging, like Elpenor,
right.
bury my body.
Yes, and just to review, Elpenor fell off Circe's roof in the Odyssey and lay dead and undiscovered in the bushes.
Right, and nobody seemed to notice that he wasn't on the ship.
See, that's the difference. That's the difference.
That is a big difference.
You get into the car with your family. Do we have everybody?
Right.
We got everybody. Right.
Exactly right. Otherwise,
Odysseus. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. Please. Go ahead.
Well, Odysseus has no concern for the other men.
Right.
Aeneas is a very different character. He's a much more compassionate individual.
Yes. Right. I like the way that that Aeneas is humanized in that kind of way. Right. So my students, more and more so when I teach the Odyssey, the more and more they say, I like the story, but I hate this guy.
Really?
Yeah, they find him, Odysseus, so selfish and off-putting. And that business, I mean, it's not just Odysseus, but nobody of his men noticed Elpenor was gone.
Right.
So I think there's a Home Alone parody to be. You do know that story?
Yes, I do. Macaulay Culkin? Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah,
whatever.
where he's left behind.
Right.
So Elpenor is, maybe an episode where he doesn't die.
He's trapped in the house.
He sprains his ankle.
Has to defend it against invaders.
Right. Something like that. Yeah. So so he's moved by this,
right.
And he wants to know what happened to Palinurus, what happened to all these guys, and
True compassion,
and he feels really bad that he can't do anything to get them onto the boat, right? Yeah.
So then the Sibyl goes ahead, right, and she tells him that neighboring peoples will receive omens, and they'll build a tomb, and they will appease his bones, Palinurus's bones, with the proper rites.
Right. So they kind of they build like a cenotaph to him, and so if that's kind of this that will get him across. And so Sibyl,
cenotaph.
Yeah, like a false tomb.
Right.
Right. Okay. A place of memorial when
an empty tomb.
An empty tomb.
Do you want to have one of those?
No, I don't.
Like a bait and switch.
No.
People will come to Grand Rapids to see the tomb of Jeff Winkle, right? But you won't really be buried there.
Yeah.
You'll be in Memphis next to Elvis or something like that.
Oh, I would like that. I would actually like to be cremated and put into kind of a nice, red figure vase.
You want to be cremated?
Well, what do I care? I want to be dead.
Okay.
Right. So, I guess this is not a happy ending, but at least Palinurus gets some good news. Aeneas gets some good news that Palinurus will be taken care of.
Yes, and his soul can then go settle somewhere, right? He can finally get his mail forwarded out of the DMZ.
That's right. So now they finally approach Charon, and Charon immediately recognizes something's not right here.
Okay.
He says, this guy is alive. No, I don't take live people.
Meaning Aeneas.
Aeneas, right.
We don't serve your kind.
We don't serve your kind. And even he talks about, like, I've been tricked before. And he says, Hercules came down here to get Cerberus.
Right.
Theseus and Prometheus came down here to kind of drag off Persephone, kind of caveman style. And so he says, I took those chumps over and I'm not doing it again.
That's right. So is this comic? Is there some humor here?
I think there is some humor here.
A little bit of light moment.
Right. So again, Charon is kind of cranky old man.
Right.
It reminds us of, he shows up in the frogs like we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
That, right?
That's the episode of Brekekekeks Goax.
That's the one. Right. And so maybe even Vergil's tapping into kind of his knowledge of that play. Where Charon is kind of this cranky old man.
He doesn't want to be duped once again, because it always comes down to Charon, right? He's always the guy that has to clean up other people's mess.
Exactly right.
So he's got the staff, the pole, right, the pike for moving the boat. On the other hand, what does he have? He's got a mop and a bucket, right?
Yes,
cleaning up people's messes.
Right. It's awful. Exactly right. So he's a weathered and jaded taxi driver.
Yeah.
Who's sick of picking up the drunks. Exactly right. But then the Sibyl kind of produces the trump card, and she whips out of her European carry-all the golden bow.
The golden bow.
Right.
So she says in effect to Charon, you don't like the particular task you've been given. What do you think of this?
Yes. How you like me now?
Right. She whips that out, and how does he respond?
He says, he shuts up and he says, yep, never mind.
He bows before the bow.
He bows to the bow, and he takes him across.
In the stern of the ship, or in the...
Where are you going with this?
In the stern of the ship, or in the
bow?
The bow.
He bows to the bow.
Come
in the bow.
Come on.
Exactly right. Oh my gosh. And then we see again. It's kind of like it's a who's who. It's like it's kind of a greatest hits. Like he gets to the
fan service.
Fan service. That's what it is. And as we're approaching the other side, he gets a glimpse of Cerberus, the famous 3-headed dog.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the depiction of this dog in Dante is phenomenal.
I'm not familiar with it.
Well, I don't want to give too much away, but
Yeah.
the way that Dante depicts Cerberus is just remarkable. So for a long time, I was a person who had not read Dante. Mm-hmm. A year ago, right about now, I had the opportunity to take a small teaching gig at a school in Florida, and I was hired to teach medieval intellectual tradition, something like that. Kind of out of my range, to be honest. Kind of like some of the things you're doing now, right? And doing well.
Like film and world religions, without a doubt.
Right, but I can read, I can study, I can take notes, I can learn. So I did those things, and I got to teach Dante.
Nice.
And I was just overwhelmed by, even in translation, I think I used the Esalen translation, by the beauty of Dante's depiction of the underworld.
Yeah.
Right? I read the Inferno.
Nice.
And appreciated it, of course, 10 times more knowing Vergil as I do than without that knowledge.
And of course, Vergil is Dante's guide.
Correct.
Yes. So, but I'm thinking that we got to do an episode at some point, like make a comparison of the Vergilian Underworld and Dante's.
We might want to bring in some heavy hitters because, people, they maybe, I don't know if we're flattering ourselves, they'd like our take on this stuff, but I'd really like to get in someone who, speaks Italian, reads Italian.
Yeah.
Because, there's only so much I'll dare to try.
Do you know any Dante scholars? I do not.
I know a couple.
Okay.
And not well, but I think they probably would like this.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah. Excellent. So they see Cerberus here, and let me just kind of share Lombardo's translation.
Yes, let's hear that.
This is a great passage and a nice translation. So, crouching in a cave on the farther shore, Cerberus made these regions resound, barking like thunder from all three of his throats. The seer, close enough now to see the snakes bristling on his neck, flung a honeyed cake laced with drugs into his ravenous jaws. Cerberus snatched it from the air and then went slack, easing his huge limp bulk to the ground, stretching out all over his den, dead to the world. Aeneas entered the cave and left behind the water of no return.
That's so dramatic.
I love that. The Sibyl she's come prepared. She also has in her bag a honeyed cake.
That's right.
It's stuffed with sleeping pills.
It's like a Milkbone,
yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah, here you go.
Yep. And that does it.
Puts them right out.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Great stuff.
And then there's a high moment of drama, right? Or a moment of high drama, I should say. Aeneas entered the cave and left behind the water of no return.
Mm-hmm.
As the river Styx.
Yes, right? Exactly right. So another threshold cross. There's so many liminal moments here. You have the beach, you have the forest, you have the cave, and now you have the river.
Correct. And now he's going to go down. He's going to meet all of the heroes yet to be born. Mm-hmm. Here, Vergil is going to employ some Platonic psychology, which is really helpful.
Okay.
The only way to introduce the vast sweep of Roman history, which has not yet occurred.
Yes.
Right, because we're back in the 10th century, maybe the 11th century, right after the war.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to introduce all of Roman history, which has not occurred, is to have Aeneas meet the souls of those yet to be born.
Right.
So he's going to meet the soul of Cicero, and he's going to meet the soul of Camillus, and the soul of Julius Caesar, and all these souls that are about to be sent down through their pneumatic tubes, like when you're in line at the bank in the old days.
Yes.
Right? And down into their bodies with the dum-dum right beside it.
That's right, exactly right. I always love that dum-dum.
I did too.
Yeah, I still grab one. Yeah.
You go through the bank these days?
Very rarely. But if there is a transaction that if I need to go talk to a teller,
like someone gives you a bar of gold or something, you can't just, use your phone to take a picture of it and get it deposited?
Exactly right. So, it's rare when I have to go to the bank, but when I do, I'm grabbing a dum-dum.
You're grabbing a dum-dum.
That's all I'm really trying to say.
I like a candy that insults you, even as it pleases you.
Right.
You like the taste of this?
Right, exactly.
Dum-dum.
Right. It reminds me of a Gaffigan bit where he talks about standing in line for the Dumbo ride.
Right.
In Disney, and he imagines that he imagines this line is taking forever, and says he imagines at the end of the line is just a mirror where you see yourself, and there's a guy that just says Dumbo.
That's exactly what it's got to be. Well, that wraps up this episode.
What are we up against it?
Yeah, we are. I don't feel like we've gotten very far into the book, Jeff. Help me out.
Well, we're taking our time.
Okay.
It's just that it's so rich, as we talked about.
Yeah.
I'm coming back to the Aeneid now after a number of years away from it. I just recognized that, man, it is so packed with stuff that I would rather err on the side of taking our time.
I would too.
And doing it well.
Right.
But we do have to get out of here.
We got to get out of here.
Right, so as always, we have some people to thank. But before we thank them, I want to say something about the Moss method.
I'd like to talk about both my Greek and Latin offerings, if that's okay with you, Jeff?
Yep.
Okay. So for Greek, this program is called the Moss method, and it takes you from neophyte to
erudite.
Thank you, Jeff. What it is a Greek program. I'm pretty sure it's unlike anything else on offer on the internet, and this is why. It is an enormous, a tremendous value. In Module 1, you get 40 video lessons where I analyze these 40 amazing stories written by Charles Melville Moss, interesting stuff, some of which deals with the themes we're talking about today. And I teach you the alphabet, syllabification, pronunciation, how to put endings on verbs, nouns, adjectives, pronouns, the whole 9 yards. It's all there. And you take the tests, the quizzes, you do the assignments. There's really more than I can describe in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
But I know what you really like is...
I like the office hours.
What's a office hour?
That's where the people who have signed up for the course, they can actually meet with you.
Right. Yes, once per week on Fridays, as it turns out, we get together and we read some Greek together, whether it's the New Testament or Homer or Plato, whatever you like. And that comes with the program. So not only can you have a self-paced, expert, and accessible approach to the language, but you get to consult my expertise.
That's fantastic. And you get to meet people from across the country and around the world,
That's
right?
correct. Yeah. We're also studying Greek with you at the same time.
Fantastic.
So I'm a serious student of the language. I like to think of myself as someone who's a little farther ahead in learning than the beginner. I think that's a modest thing to say. Mm-hmm. And I can be your psychopampos, your soul guide into the world of Greek.
So mossmethod.com.
That's correct.
They can check out a bunch of free stuff that's there.
A bunch of free stuff.
And consider signing up for this wonderful course.
That's correct. And as well...
You got a Latin course.
Yeah. So this is the Lingua Latina per se illustrata, the course built by Hans Orberg, the great book sold by our sponsor, Hackett. And this program as well takes you ab initio, from the ground up. If you've never studied any Latin before, this is a painless... joyful way to get into the study of Latin.
Fantastic.
This is $199. We're up to 30 instructional videos now where I am interacting with a live audience of students. You can learn to love these other students. They're charming people. And you can be, sitting in on a classroom and learning all of the material without all the pressure of being in the classroom and according to your own schedule.
Fantastic. So if someone is interested, what should they do?
They should go to latinperdiem.com/LLPSI, and take a look and see if it's for you. They also get weekly office hours with me to ask anything you want to about the Latin language.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, Jeff, we need to thank some of the wonderful people who help us out in the production of these little shows.
Yes.
First and foremost, Miss Mishka.
Miss Mishka, yes. She is the one who puts it all together, makes us sound better than we actually are. She is the filter for our Instagram photos, as it were.
That's right. She's kind of like the Sybil, right?
She is kind of like the Sybil.
Yeah, she takes the golden bow and she says, I'm going to fix that,
yes,
right?
Exactly. So, as always, great thanks to Mishka. And then also to Scott Van Zen and Ken Tamplin for the blistering music that you hear throughout the podcast.
Right. Yeah, I like that rock and roll.
I do, too. Mm-hmm. I like that rock and roll, too.
Yes. And what are we doing next week, Jeff?
Well, next week is the 100th episode, Dave.
Wow.
So are we doing the greatest hits?
We're going to try.
Okay.
Still unsure whether we're going to have it all together in time. But we have people working all over the globe. Not really.
Yeah. Tirelessly.
Yeah. Toiling in underground caverns with the help of the Cyclopes, forging the lightning bolts and the invisible helm of Pluto and so forth.
Right. Trying to find the best of. I don't envy them.
To put together this cheesy clip show. Imagine 100 episodes of ranting and raving.
Oh, man.
Nonsense.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But we've come this far, and like I said at the beginning, I'm looking forward to the next 100.
I am too.
Yeah.
I am too.
So, Dave, I believe you have our gustatory parting shot.
I do, and this comes from an author that a lot of people are very fond of, one Clive Staples Lewis.
Ah, yes, right.
And this is from the first book. I know it's not the first in the reprints, but it's the first.
Yes, I gotcha.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, right?
Yep.
And this is in the voice, you got to hear this in the voice of the incredibly disturbing Tilda Swinton.
Oh my gosh, that portrayal is
isn't that good?
Yes, yeah.
She plays the Ice Queen, right?
So good.
The White Witch.
Yep.
And this is what she says. "It is dull, son of Adam, to drink without eating," said the Queen presently. "What would you like best to eat?" "Turkish delight, please, your majesty," said Edmund.
Yes.
Now, do you remember, Jeff, when we were in Greece with Christiana Dimitra, right, our wonderful guide, our Sybil in Greece?
Yes.
Do you remember what she said about this?
I don't remember. I mean, I vaguely kind of know where you're going, but remind me.
Sure. So, like many of the things we encountered in Greek culture, they are Turkish. You remember Turkish coffee?
Oh, yes.
And I said, "Oh, Christiana, is this Turkish coffee?" No. This is Greek coffee. This is Greek coffee. I said, "But it's just like no, it's not. It's Greek coffee."
Very proud.
And then I said, "Do you have any Turkish delight?" No. We have Greek delight.
That's right.
Remember, it's a box of like gelatinous cubes.
It's awful in my opinion.
You don't like it?
No, I don't.
I liked it.
That's another reason I didn't like Edmund. Like, really? That's your jam?
I could only eat one, but it's a gelatinous albuminous cube,
right?
Dusted with confectioner's sugar.
Exactly.
And I think it swells up to 10 times the natural size once you ingest it.
Exactly right.
No. That's Greek delight.
The Greek delight, right? So,
thanks for listening.
Thank you.